our fifth story out front, the breaking news. Tonight, the White House making two major announcements. First, releasing those nearly 100 pages of emails detailing the back and forth between the CIA, the State Department, and the White House, showing how the so-called talking points about the about the attack on the American compound in Benghazi changed over time. Now, that, of course, came after intense pressure from Republicans, and while it's a lot of pages, it is not all the pages. Then a short time later, President Obama made a very terse statement about the IRS targeting conservative groups and saying the acting commissioner has resigned. Resigned, of course, after being demanded to do so by the Treasury Secretary. The question is, you've got these scandals, you've got the Department of Justice targeting one of the most important media organizations in this country without a subpoena on its phone records. Will any of this cry at the critics? Out front tonight, CNN contributor Reihan Salam and radio show host Stephanie Miller. Great to have both of you with us. Reihan, obviously the president moving tonight aggressively to get rid of the head of the IRS, saying, I do not tolerate this. They put out nearly 100 pages of emails. They are trying to make all this go away. Will it work?
I am very skeptical, partly because the concern is that if you saw this happen here in the IRS, if you saw this happen vis-a-vis the Associated Press, there are deeper concerns about whether or not they've taken a slipshod attitude towards surveilling other organizations and what have you. So this is fundamentally going to raise a lot of questions. They insisted for so long that there was no there. And so I think this is actually going to be blood in the water. And it's not going to be Republicans. It's going to be media organizations that are no longer going to take statements made by the White House at face value.
Stephanie, do you agree? Is this just blood in the water?
You know, Aaron, I got to say, if I hear one more Republican say this is worse than Watergate, it's worse than Watergate. I mean, really? Pick up a history book. First of all, this acting director was a Bush appointee. The reason we don't have a real director is because Republicans have obstructed appointing one, like everything else they've obstructed. The IRS blew the whistle on themselves. Think about it. Nixon, you know, that was a Nixon plant, and he authorized who to do audits against. I mean, look, there was an explosion of Tea Party groups after Citizens United, and this was not done correctly, Aaron, but this is not even close to Watergate, as John Dean has said.
Well, Stephanie, it's interesting, you know, Dana Milbank wrote in the Washington Post an interesting take on this, right? Saying, you know what, you're right, this is not like Watergate. It's the opposite. Watergate was a control freak president. This is a president who doesn't seem to have control over anything at all. Everybody seems to be running rampant and doing whatever they want. The implication being it's just as bad, just different.
Well, I mean, Aaron, look, let's look at the, the AP thing. If this were a Republican president, Republicans would have said, oh, those sissies at the AP, this is national security. Who cares? I mean, there just is a double standard. I mean, to have Dick Cheney say, oh, this was lies and this was a cover-up. Don't even get me started on the Bush administration in terms of, he's talking about Benghazi. I mean, as the president said, Aaron, really? There was a 3-day cover-up before they said this was an act of terror? I mean, it's like, come on.
David Axelrod made a very astute observation recently on, I believe it was MSNBC. He said that part of the issue is that the government is so vast that there is no way for the president to be held accountable. And I think that when you think about it more deeply, it really is true that the government is so vast that it's difficult for any one man to really surveil its authority and its abuses of its authority. But of course, President Obama has sought to expand the writ of government in all kinds of ways. So I think that that's part of why you have a lot of conservatives who are reacting to this set of scandals. Because I think that, again, these are folks who say that, well, maybe the scope of government is already sufficiently broad that we shouldn't rush to expand it any further. Those are some of the deeper issues that are raised by what we've seen over the last couple of weeks.
All right. Well, thanks very much to both of you. I have to say this, though. It does seem, Republican or Democrat, the other side always does seem to see the blood in the water, and that's a big frustration in the whole system.